All right. Thank you for coming to our first scrap meeting of the year. And today we are going to begin by introducing all of the new scrap members for the year. And we'll discuss our process for the minutes, our meeting schedule for the year, review something related to the manga discussion from the previous year. And then we'll discuss some projects that we may be interested in doing for the rest of the year or for the first meeting. So first I'd like to go through and let all of you introduce yourselves. You can say what library you come from and something interesting about yourself. So I'll start. My name is Rachel Fisher. I am the Member Services Librarian for CCS. And I have been working for CCS for a bit more than 4 years. Something interesting about myself would be that I regularly like to hike in the woods in the area. So next on my list is Sarah. You can unmute yourself.
Me, Sarah? Yeah. I'm Sarah Scolius. I'm a cataloging librarian at Northbrook. I've been here for about 9 years. Something interesting about me. Should not be this hard. I was not prepared for this question. I'm totally blanking. Can I skip that part? Sorry.
Sure. That's
My
okay.
brain is mush this week. I apologize.
Next person on my list is Kelly Green, but she was not able to come today. She works for Park Ridge Public Library, and we'll see her next meeting. The next one on the list is Rachel. So feel free to unmute yourself. Sorry.
That's okay. My name is Rachel. I'm the cataloger at Algonquin Area Public Library. I've been the cataloger for about almost 3 months now. I've worked here for about a year as an adult services librarian. Something interesting about me, I like rocks. I have a lot of rocks at my desk. I think they're pretty. That's all I can think of. Sorry.
The next one is Nora.
Hello all. I have a very alarming looking burst blood vessel in my eye, which is why I'm like looking at you sideways, and I'm gonna be camera off today. I am the head of technical and automated services at the Prospect Heights Library. I've been here for a few years and I was on scrap this past year. And yes, something interesting about me. I have a 13-month-old son who keeps me busy, and it's a great age to visit it. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, thanks. Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy from the McHenry Public Library District. I've been with the library for over 30 years, been a cataloger for somewhere between 10 and 15 here, and in my current role as Technical Services Manager for about 8. And interesting fact, while I currently do not have any fur babies, I consider myself amongst the veteran cat owned.
The next one is Nancy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Lucasucci from Warren Newport Public Library. I've been working in tech services there since 2016. Before that, I worked in Lake Villa, before that, around Lake. And one interesting thing is this summer was really nice with daily trips every Wednesday going to visit libraries and downtown in this area. So my daughter and I visited 21 libraries.
Oh, that's a lot. Next one is Brad.
Hi, I'm Brad. I work at Cary Area Public Library. I've been here for 5.5 years in tech services. And Interesting fact about me is I started working in libraries before I had actually started the day before I started high school, so working in libraries longer than that.
Great. All right, I'm going to share my agenda so everyone can see it while we talk about the rest of the items on the agenda. One moment. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about today on the agenda is to review the process for minutes. So in the past years that I've worked for CCS, the way we've handled minutes for scrap is that I'm the one who's been just taking notes and creating the minutes. I send it to the scrap listserv to review and let me know if there's any changes that need to be made. And we haven't actually been passing motions to approve the minutes. We've just been allowing them to be passed as they are, as long as there's no changes that need to be made. So we've been skipping that like official voting step. And I was wondering if you wanted to continue doing that for this year, if you wanted to switch back to the process that's used for CAM to pass a motion to approve the minutes.
I'm fine with the informal, just someone will speak up if something needs to be changed, but otherwise it's cool.
I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, great.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I was just saying I also agree if we need to all agree.
Okay. All right, great. So I think everyone is all right with continuing with what we've been doing. So do that. And I do want to make sure that we review our schedule next. So we have made some changes. So the upcoming meetings are going to be held at 1 o'clock instead of 9:30. And I wanted to remind everyone of where you can find the list of meetings on the CCS website. So if you click on meetings and technical and advisory, you'll find a list of all of our technical and advisory groups. If you click on scrap and then upcoming meetings, you'll find our list of upcoming meetings and agendas. So this has already been updated. So all of our meetings are at 1 p.m. If you open up the item, you can see that there's already a link for the item and you can add it to your calendar. I'll also be posting the agenda and minutes on the calendar items so that they'll be archived for the future. Does anyone have any questions about our meeting schedule? All right, great. We'll move on to the next topic. So at our previous meeting, the scrap members asked me to do some research into searches executed on the genre names for manga. So I'm just going to switch to showing the minutes from the last meeting. So at the last meeting, we had a request to add additional genres for manga that were not already the manga genres. So doing research, I discovered that most of these just signify genders and age groups. And the scrap members at that time said that they did not want to make the distinction based on gender by using genres, but did ask me to do some additional research to make sure that we understand whether people are actually searching for these words while they're looking for manga. So I did ask Bob to create reports using those genre terms and look for those terms within a whole search. So someone here in the search string would have typed in Shonen Jump manga, but that can also be written in other ways. So he would have looked for shonen as a truncated version in any search. So we can see in 2018 that most people did use the word shonen when searching for it. And some other words came up like shoujo in this search. And it looked like those were fairly popular in 2018. But as the years went on, between then and now, there's been quite a decrease in the interest in searching for manga in this way by those terms. So you can still see that there were some that were searched for in 2019. There were more than 50 searches for Yuri manga, but the amount has continued to decrease. Like surprisingly, even during the pandemic, the amount of searches were much lower that had those words in it. And going towards a more recent year in 2023, we can see that when some people are searching for words, it's related to manga, it's frequently within other names. They're doing research on actual people. And the amount of times they're actually searching for a term related to manga has decreased quite a bit. So you can see that seinen manga was only searched 5 times, and my isekai life, or I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, was searched 5 times. So there really doesn't seem to be a significant amount of interest in searching for the genre of manga. So they're probably searching for specific titles. Searching for titles is much more common in general. So I do have this in our folder, so I can share this document with you. I'll copy the link and post that in the chat so you can take a look at it. 1 second. So if you want to review that research, you're welcome to do it. Given the low amount of searches in more recent years, I didn't want to do a very thorough analysis because I'm pretty busy right now with training. But there doesn't seem to be as much interest. So if you want to think about the previous meeting's opinion or the previous year's opinion and this research before the next meeting, you're welcome to do that. But I was wondering if anyone had any thoughts on it. Sandra, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out there that maybe the amount of searches is decreasing because people have tried searching and got nothing. So they just learn not to search like that.
It's possible, but it's hard to know.
I was thinking.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Right. So before the next meeting, I'll just send out a question asking if you still want to continue discussing it or have any interest in making a decision that's different from the previous year's decision to not add the genre headings. All right, so the next things on the agenda are the new business. And one of the projects that was suggested at our last fiscal year's meeting was to review the pages in the Catalogers Wiki that have the word recommended on it. And this came about because that word was used on a page instead of words related to required. So the actual nature of the local practice was to require the use of a specific term in the leader for fiction. So that was to use fiction and not novel. And so I added this link to the agenda for all of the pages that came up when I just type in the word recommended. And the suggestion was to review any pages that have this term recommended or recommend in it, to make sure that we really want to use the term recommended and that it is optional rather than required. So this is not something we need to go through today at this meeting. We can make this a short meeting, but for the next meeting, I would like all of you to read through these pages to find where it says recommended and see if there's any specific changes that you would like to make to these specific pages in order to clarify the information, to identify if you think this should really be a required statement, and to see if there's any other additional changes you think that need to be made to the pages. Does anyone have any questions about this?
No questions, but I think this is a great project and will be really clarifying.
Great, thanks. Any other questions or comments?
Now that as we're reviewing pages, should we come up with some kind of plan to just kind of review all the pages periodically?
Yes, I do have that in mind as something we could do like every 3 years or so, but it is a lot of pages. So maybe we could think about how to create a schedule to do it periodically, like a group of pages every year. And I can think about like how we'd be able to divide that up in a reasonable way so it wouldn't be too overwhelming.
That sounds like a great idea, Rachel.
So maybe something that we could try to assign the individual scrap members to review certain pages so not everyone has to review them in the future. Is there any other questions about this? Great. So the next item on the agenda were some suggestions that I received from someone who's not a scrap member for the Catalogers Wiki. And one of them is to add examples of well-formed MARC records to the pages that are on specific formats. And the other one was to add a page that provides instructions for how to submit new authority record headings. So this could be even for things like working with the subject funnels, the subject heading funnels that we don't necessarily always work with. But it could also include things like recommending that headings are submitted to CCS via a help desk ticket. I was wondering if any of you have interests in adding these types of things to the Catalogers Wiki.
Rachel, I thought that the wiki already had something about adding authority records to the help desk, but I can check. But I already thought it was already in there. Maybe
Okay.
they're not looking at the right.
It's possible that it's already there. Sorry, Kathy?
Virginia, I'm pretty sure it's already in there because I submitted one for series tracing.
Yeah, I think so. I thought so too. But maybe it's hiding out somewhere where people aren't looking at it because there's something about authorities procedures at the sort of at the beginning, I think. I'll look.
Okay, maybe I just missed it and forgot it was there. But I think their other suggestion about how to create proposals for subject headings and working with funnels sounds interesting, but it's not necessarily something we've done before. So is that something that would interest you to add to that page?
I'll look, but yeah, it's more difficult now to do subject headings because so C wants you to buy into something so you can, which costs a lot of money, and I don't know, CCS wants to do it, and then you can actually propose right then using their using, I forget what it's called, it's not Web Dewey or Web whatever, but anyway, it gets more complicated. It was a lot easier in the olden days where you could just send them something, you could just basically email them the thing and that it was included. And LC is not doing subject headings as much as often. They used to do it monthly reports, and now and there's nowhere knows where to go. But now it's like every few, it's not as often, they're not doing as much because there are so many people asking, suggesting it.
Laura posted in the chat that she suggests adding some clarifying language to this page. So, Virginia, could you read through this page to see if you can suggest any revisions to it?
Yeah, I will.
Great. The other suggestion that I mentioned first was adding examples of well-formed MARC records to the pages on individual formats. Is anyone interested in potentially working on this for a project this year? We would need to identify specific records and pages to put them on. So I think it would be easiest for me to just maybe take a screenshot of an image of a MARC record so that I don't have to type it in completely because of how it works.
Well, I think having some examples would be valid. In the past, because I have served on Scrap before, when the wiki was being created, we were avoiding putting that out so it doesn't become the be-all end-all, where this record has this, but now you're saying that, but this is my example record. And then like nothing ever, if it's not in that record, it never gets done. So that's why it hasn't been there in the past. And it will be something that will need to be looked at regularly if we choose to pursue that in terms of.
Right.
So just my thoughts on it.
Adrian asked if we're looking for examples of specific procedures. You could spend time finding an example for anything if you really wanted. I think it would be just an example that would potentially show a full record that would match like local practices on a specific page. And maybe they're looking for, I think maybe they're looking for something that would be more detailed than the examples of one specific line. So like it would be the local practices within the context of a full record. And the suggestion was specific to like, wasn't specific to one specific page, but was for each of the formats.
It seems like sort of wanting a more defined or narrowed down version of the I forget what it's called, but basically the chart where it's like, oh, here's all of the different fields and what are required and what are not. And it sounds like maybe what they're searching for is sort of a broken down version of that, is like, these are the ones that you want to make sure you have for Wonder books. These are the ones you want to make sure you have for audiobooks, that sort of thing. And yeah, I don't know if, I mean, beyond just like finding a good record and screenshotting it, it would be a real undertaking to make a bunch of examples of like, here are all of the required and recommended fields for all of the different formats. I could see the use for sure, but I don't know if it's reasonably feasible.
Right. It would be a very time-consuming process, and I'm not sure if it would be the best use of our time while we're still also trying to add in the time we would need to spend reviewing the catalogers wiki on a regular basis.
Maybe we could revisit the MARC records at our next meeting after we've done like a review of some wiki pages and then have an idea of how this might impact, the kind of work involved. Because if we look at books, are we just doing here's a book record, or is it here's an adult book, here's a children's book, here's what's different? Are we addressing every single case of what's in the wiki, or the things where we raise the most questions like, okay, so now I've got my Playaway and I've got my Wonder Book, and what's different with this? And, video games where different platforms might have different nuances, but at least you can codify what the standard is supposed to be. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think a good way of reviewing the pages for that could be to consider what it would be like if it was on a page like about video games or playaways. And if you think that that would actually add something to the page or just be redundant. So I think I wouldn't recommend right now to take a lot of time to look into every single page while you still have the project to work on the ones that are linked to in the agenda. But I would suggest just taking some time to think about it while you're looking at these pages that have the words recommended on it, to take an additional few moments to just think about what you would want to see on a page, like to distinguish a way to provide more details to an AV page, like, or video games and so forth. Does that seem like or something that you could reasonably do for the next meeting?
I agree with reviewing the recommended topics, and I also wonder why they ask for the example of records. Because we're talking about cataloging, where there are a lot of places where we have cataloging a mark field, how to catalog, how to use connection, all that. It's not our place to duplicate what's already out. But they want a glimpse of local rules, CCS rules,
Right.
like a review of what's already in the wiki. So again, we go back to reviewing the wiki,
Right. We do need to keep in mind that the purpose of the wiki is really for local practices. So if we think that just adding a image of a well-formed mark record airs towards more like a national practice and something that doesn't need to be done, because that can be potentially something you just find on the Mark 21 webpage, then we wouldn't necessarily need an image of that mark record there.
Rachel,
anyone else have-
that makes a
Oh,
lot of
Kathy?
sense. What you said makes a lot of sense. The thing that's been floating around in my mind now is that as CCS gets larger and we bring in more libraries, we've been saying that training of our catalogers is a responsibility of the individual library. Should we be looking at more of a training model, kind of like SWAN does? Because when you look at the Rails training, they have routine classes on cataloging. And I don't know if it's just like refresher kind of courses, or if it's dealing with our local practices or how to do this in the Symphony system, or what exactly it is, but they're there. I mean, they come up regularly. And if we were to register CCS catalogers into those, Do we have any idea what they cover? Could that be found out?
I can definitely ask Nancy about her plans, but CCS really doesn't have time to offer cataloging basics types of classes and want that to be covered by the library locally, because we really just focus on how to use Polaris for their daily workflow, because we're very very busy during migration time periods, and adding additional courses is not really something we'd be able to do. And the directors would, if we did ask the directors about it, they would not want us to offer something that would already be offered by Rails or CMC, since we'd be just duplicating something that can be done elsewhere. Sandra, I see your hand is raised.
Yep. Back when Indian Trails was part of CCS in the 90s, what used to be called the CCS catalogers meetings would have like a little 5 or 10 minute block in every meeting that was instructional. And it wasn't, here's how to catalog video games from top to bottom. It would be, here's the subject headings that you can use for a thing, or let's talk about the LCGFT for a minute, or here's how to code this thing. But it would just be a little bite-sized chunk of something instructional in every meeting.
And we do take requests on what to add to the CAM meeting, but we haven't had any requests on cataloging basics. They're usually more like requests on how to use Polaris for something specific, but we definitely would be open to adding any educational topic to the CAM agenda. We just want to know that there's an interest in it. So anyone can submit something and ask CCS staff to speak about it. I see Heather posted a comment about how it might be helpful to have the records on pages like play away items for the Launchpad, or for video game formats. So I think I'll just write a summary up of what we discussed in the minutes, and we'll suggest just briefly thinking about some of those format related pages like video game formats, playaways, and see what you think about the idea of adding the images and mark records to those pages, and not just the examples that we have, whether you feel it would be useful or just redundant of what is already there. But you don't have to spend too much time doing it. You don't have to spend a lot of time looking at each page of the wiki. Just maybe choose like 1 or 2 formats to think about while you're taking time to look at the wiki for next meeting. I do want to move on because I don't want to spend too much time on that right now. But the next thing on the agenda is the incoming suggestions we've had for indexing fields. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we are making note of the fields that people are suggesting that we should index. We had some come in last year during the previous meeting and in a help desk, and we regularly have suggestions. But at this time, it actually takes a significant amount of time to add any new fields to the indexing process. And we have said in the past that we would be willing to do that if it seems like it would be useful at the time when new libraries migrate to CCS and their data is loaded. However, in talking with staff at Innovative, we found that the amount of time that it takes to complete that migration process is so long that we really don't want to add to that right now. it's even taken a lot longer to do our last upgrade of production. Our most recent upgrade of production we thought would take a lot less time, but it ended up taking about 8 hours. So at this point, it's just not feasible for us to add in any other new fields to be indexed in the future. But if there is something that you are truly wanting to be indexed that's not indexed, we could potentially consider it for future migration when we're migrating less libraries, but at this point, while doing 2 libraries at the same time, we won't be able to do it this year. So if there is something that you're really interested in and want to put it off for a different year, keep that in mind and feel free to bring it up in the future. We just can't do it with the Waukegan and Mount Prospect migration. Does anyone have any questions about that? All right. So the next thing on the agenda came about while reviewing Waukegan's local practices. And Virginia and I regularly review local practices before a new library joins so that we can make suggestions of what should be in those 691 fields so that they can save any local headings when the records are deduplicated. And one of the local practices that Waukegan had was adding headings for books for memory challenged adults and adult literacy. So at this point, regardless of what we decide, they're adding those to a 691 field so they can retain those and not lose those when the books are deduplicated. But Virginia and I were wondering if you would think these would be useful genre headings as local genre headings. So there are examples of the records they would add them to in the training server that I included in the agenda. And you're not required to vote on a motion today. You're welcome to think about it if you want to. I just thought it may be potentially useful for the rest of CCS to have access to these genre headings if they're interested, and was wondering what you thought about it.
They seem like they would be helpful headings to have available.
Yeah, I'll be checking them. I'm really interested.
I think that would
Adrian
be,
asked if there are similar headings in LCGFT. I didn't find any related headings. Virginia, did you find any related headings when you were looking for information on that?
No, I don't think so.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions?
I think they would definitely add positively to our database. The only thing that I would question is in the first one, books for memory challenged adults, having a more general term like materials for memory challenged adults.
Okay. That makes sense. That could definitely be useful for kits. So I know there's a lot of kits that libraries can purchase that are related to memory challenged issues.
I do have another local for dyle- dyslexia, books for dyslexia people, users. And so in a way, books for memory challenged adults seems to fit sort of the same, you might say, you'd see, they would sort of match in how they're shown or in similar style.
I think the one for books for with the dyslexic font is specifically useful for books because it refers to the font that's used, but this would not necessarily be something that would be in a kit.
My main question would be, what's the criteria for saying something is books or materials for memory challenged adults? Is like, because of dyslexia books, it usually calls it out that it's dyslexic friendly and stuff. This, we're kind of more relying on gut feeling or just we're going to use it that way, so we're going to put the tag on it. I'd just be curious about if you would need to develop criteria that would say that this meets that criteria.
That's a great idea, Brad. I think I could definitely get a list of criteria that they use at Waukegan for the next meeting. If you want to think about it some more, we can look at Waukegan's criteria. I know I noticed on the bibliographic record for that type of work, they do have memory challenged adults in the subtitle, but I don't know how common that is or if it's just ends up being something that would be in a summary. I see the 520 field does have a summary with the word memory challenged adults in it. So that could be something that would be useful to have. Does anyone have any other questions about this topic? Okay, that's some good feedback. I don't think we'll want to vote on this today, but I'll definitely ask Waukegan for their criteria for both of these subject headings so that we can have a better idea of how to apply them. And you can think about that and see if you'd want to vote on it at the next meeting. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Great. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to discuss today that wasn't on the agenda? All right, great. Since there's nothing else, we are going to adjourn the meeting. And I will send out an attendance form for everyone that attended to fill it out so that I know who's here today. And we'll send out the minutes to the scrap meeting when we're ready. Oh, Adrienne has a question, but her mic's not working. Adrienne, did you want to ask a question? Adrienne, are you there? Oh. Yeah, Adrian's question is about the headings that they're interested in the 385 and 386 fields. Because of the migration, I have not had time to look into those, but they are on my list. The thing about that too is that they're not indexed. So in order to make those useful in the pack, we'd have to have those indexed. So if they are in the records, it would only be useful to staff that would be looking at the MARC records. So I can do some more research into it, but I'd have to put that off until after our Waukegan and Mount Prospect migration is over. But if anyone else wants to do some research into the 385 and 386 fields to see if there's any information about them out there, feel free to do it. And please do let me know if you're interested in doing that research. I do think that there's been some controversy over the AutoCAD list of whether people should use those fields or not. So that's something that may take some time to dig into the archive to find. But feel free to email me if you have an interest in doing that research while I don't have much time. Are there any other questions? All right, we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Have a good afternoon, everyone.